down. This is not 100% sure. We're not sure about that. So the circus was actually a sort of a stadium. Imagine something similar to the Grand Prix today, the Formula One. So where you would see the chariots driven by horses running. If you watch Ben-Hur, a very old film, but I'm sure most of you watched it. It's a masterpiece of special effects. Ben-Hur, the chariot horses were similar to the Circus of Nero. And Nero had also another hobby. The hobby he had was to kill Christians. Some of them were actually burned alive. Some of them were crucified, including one, the most famous of the Christians in Rome at the moment. A guy called Simon, whose real name would become Peter. He would become famous as Peter, Saint Peter. Saint Peter, why was he the most famous Christian? Because he was the first pope. We're talking about the 64 Anno Domini, so that's when we had the first pope here in Rome, Saint Peter. Saint Peter, Simon, who was called Peter because of the very famous, the way Jesus Christ called him, Peter, thou art my stone, and on you I will build, thank you, and on you I will build the church. And the church that he built was actually the one we're looking at now. Saint Peter was crucified upside down because he didn't feel he was as important as Jesus Christ. So he didn't want to be crucified like Jesus. Now, the first church to be built in the area was actually built under Constantine the Great. Back in the 300 Anno Domini, 323. Why under Constantine the Great? Because before Constantine, Christianity wasn't legal, it wasn't official. The Romans would believe in such goddesses and gods as Minerva, Jupiter, Hermes, you may have the Bacchus, you may have heard of them. And Emperor Constantine the Great was the first to accept, to legalize Christianity. His mother was Saint Helen, by the way, so he had a good upbringing, if you like. So this is the church how it was in Constantine the Great times. Very different from what it looks now. And it was also surrounded by fields, because under Constantine, the Roman Empire started a long period of decay. At the time, before Constantine, Rome was the capital of the world. Since its foundation in 753 before Christ, Rome had built a whole empire. Going from Spain to the UK, to Africa, almost to India, Turkey, the Middle East. And that empire started to decline after Constantine. Constantine moved the capital to Constantinople, that's the name, where the name comes from, in Turkey, and Rome was abandoned. So imagine that, from 1 million people living in Rome under the empire, under Augustus, the most famous emperor in the 1st century before Christ, the population here in Rome was 1 million people, the biggest city in the ancient world, and then it became only 20,000 people, so a dramatic decrease. And Rome was in a state of abandonment, no beautiful piazza, only fields. Even the Roman Forum, since nobody cared, was all covered in mud. So that had to be excavated. So when you go to the Forum, remember that the Forum wasn't there only 600 years ago. Rome wasn't there. No piazzas, no churches, nothing. Only medieval fortresses. We're talking about medieval castles, with a couple of rich families living, a bit more than a couple of rich families living in there. So how did Rome start to resurrect? to use a Christian term. That's to do with Martin V Colonna, another pope. The pope actually who brought the papacy back to Rome from Avignon in France, because the center of the world, the Christian world, was moved to Avignon for 75 years. Martin V brought the seat of the Pope in Rome, and since he had to live here and work here, he wanted to have it clean. So he started a campaign to clean Rome, to tidy up Rome. And he removed all the mud from the Forum to build streets and everything. And once he started to remove all of that, all the wonderful temples and capitals and statues started to come back to life, to be unearthed again. That was a big revolution for architects and artists, because nobody knew that under Rome, under the city, there was another city, a completely different city, an ancient city. And that's the beginning of a period, a historical period known as the Renaissance. Renaissance meaning the rebirth of the world, of the ancient world. So all the artists and architects were invited to come to Rome, be inspired by the ancient world, and rebuild everything as grandiose as it was. All the popes then started to feel they were heir to the Roman Empire. So they felt like they were rulers as well. So actually they were rulers back in the day. But the first pope who started to rebuild Rome as we know it today was actually Sixtus IV. Now, if you don't remember Martin V, I don't mind, but please try to remember Sixtus IV, because of the Sistine Chapel. The Sistine Chapel takes its name from Sixtus IV. The Sistine Chapel was actually the private chapel of the Pope, and it looks still like, when we look at it from outside, it will still look like a medieval castle, because we're not in the Renaissance yet. Inside the Sistine Chapel, we would, at the time of Sixtus IV, we would see this. We would see a starry sky on the ceiling, painted. The ceiling would be painted as a starry sky, and on the walls we would see paintings by very famous painter of the 1400s. We're talking about 600 years ago, 1400s. Artists such as Botticelli, Perugino, Ghirlandaio, to name but a few. So how did Michelangelo come to paint the Sistine Chapel? Michelangelo from Florence, he wasn't even a painter. This is the question that we're going to answer after the little break we're going to take now. We're going downstairs, we're going to use the restrooms, and then we go on with our story of the place, with our introduction. We'll be introducing Julius II, the warrior pope, who is the commissioner of the wonderful palace that we're gonna